Did you know that if you save $600 per month every single month over the course of 35 years, at the end of that 35-year period, you will have $252,000? Whereas if you invest that exact same money and invest it over the same period of time with an average rate of return of 7%, at the end of that 35 years, you will have $1,026,000. What is up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and I have been obsessed with millionaires for as long as I can remember. As a kid, I would study and read books about millionaires and how those millionaires became millionaires in hope of one day becoming a millionaire myself. And it's been something that I have been obsessed with for literally my entire life. And as I've gotten older, and now at the old age of 26, I have come to realize that being a millionaire and becoming financially free isn't as out of reach as so many people think. In fact, you don't have to be the Carl Icahn or Warren Buffetts of the world or the Elon Musks or Steve Jobs of the world in order to become financially free and to eventually become a millionaire. In fact, more so than creating a billion-dollar company or a multi-million-dollar stock portfolio, the thing that makes people financially free is small, intentional, and consistent steps in the right direction that add up over time to make a significant and large impact on your life later on down the road. And so with that, you guys, today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 investing tips that you can start implementing in your own investing strategy so that you yourself can start working towards that financial freedom and eventually becoming a millionaire yourself. And so let's get started. So my first investing tip for you guys is to start investing as early as possible. And by investing, I don't mean just plopping $1,000 into the stock market and calling it a day. I mean for you to sit down and really thoughtfully and realistically plan out how much money you can contribute to an investment portfolio month by month and year by year, and then sticking to that plan on an ongoing basis. And whether that is $100 for you or $200 or $300, whatever the case is, I encourage you to figure that out and to say how much money can you contribute month by month to an investment portfolio. And the other thing to keep in mind is, though it's important to start investing as early as possible, it's also important to understand that the best time to start investing for you is probably going to be different than it is for me, and the best time to start investing for me is going to be different than 100 other people. You want to make sure that you're able to pay your expenses, that you're able to get out of debt, that you have an emergency fund before you start investing. If you're investing in the stock market, but you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're racking up debt, that kind of defeats the purpose. And so before you start investing, make sure that you have those fundamental financial aspects of your life figured out first. And once you have those figured out, once you're able to pay all of your expenses, once you have an emergency fund, once you're debt-free with credit cards, then start investing. But I do encourage you to start doing this as soon as possible, whether that's in your 20s, whether you're 25, whether you're 30, whether you're 40. It's never too late to start, and it's always better to start now than to never start at all. And so, like I said, I encourage you to sit down, figure out how much you can invest and how much you can contribute on a month-by-month basis to an investment portfolio, whether that be $5, $10, $100, whatever the case is. Anything is better than nothing, and that's something that you can get started on right now. My next tip is kind of on the same point as the introduction to this video, and that is that small, consistent actions add up over time. I think so often people get caught up in their own thought process with investing, thinking, well, I'm only going to invest $500, it's not going to make a difference. Or, oh, I'm only going to contribute $10 a month, it's not going to make a difference. But the thing is that actions, no matter how small they are, can have a huge effect once they're compounded on top of each other over the course of 20, 30, 40 years. And even if you can only contribute $10, $20, $30 right now, eventually that will add up over time and become thousands of dollars later on down the road. In fact, on that same thought process that I mentioned earlier in the video, if you were to invest $100 every single month over the course of 35 years at an average rate of return of 7%, at the end of that 35-year period, you would have $171,000. $171,000 is a lot of money, and you can reach that by simply contributing $100 every single month consistently over the course of your life. And if you do that, you will be ahead of so many other people that aren't doing that exact same thing. And so actions, no matter how small they are, add up dramatically over time if you're consistent with them. And so no matter how small the action is, no matter how small the effort is, if you're consistent with it, you will start to see kind of the fruits of your labor in the process. My third tip is a big one, and that is to take the emotion out of investing. Emotions in business and investing, they never go well together. And so if you're somebody who is going to be investing, whether it be in the stock market and real estate and ETFs or mutual funds or dividends, whatever the case is, I highly encourage you to do whatever you need to do to keep your emotions out of it. If that means to create some investment plan where you can just set it and forget it, then that's what you need to do. If that means you don't check your investment portfolio except for once a year, then do it. If that means you ignore the news and you only read the news once every couple weeks, then do that. It is really important to stay neutral when it comes to investing. And you need to do whatever you need to do in order to kind of keep that emotionless aspect in your investing style. It's incredibly important to stay neutral with investing. And as you begin to grow as an investor and as you gain more experience with the market, you will get better and better at leaving your emotions out of the equation. But this can be especially challenging, especially if you're somebody who's first starting out. Whenever I first started investing at 16 years old, I got heavily emotionally invested into companies. I would hold on to companies and stocks because I had an emotional attachment to them. I would get so upset when my portfolio would lose money. I would be so ecstatic whenever I would gain money. And it was just this emotional roller coaster that ended up doing way more harm than good to my mental health. And now, 10 years later, at 26, I have gotten a lot better at keeping my emotions out of the equation, and I don't see that emotional high or emotional low whenever the stock market is either underperforming or overperforming. And as a result, it has made me a more intelligent and more well-prepared investor. So if you are going to get into investing, do whatever you need to do in order to keep your emotions out of the equation, and you will be way better off if you do that. My fourth tip for you guys is to take advantage of things like dividend yielding stocks, ETFs, and mutual funds. ETFs and mutual funds specifically is a great way to get into investing without necessarily understanding the specifics regarding individual companies. It's a great way for you to be diversified in the market while not having to put a lot of research and a lot of time into figuring out where you're going to diversify your money. If you're a new investor, in particular if you're somebody that doesn't have the time or the interest in doing a ton of research on the stock market, then ETFs and mutual funds are a really great option for you, and I think it could be a really good long-term play for you over time. On the flip side, if you're somebody who is interested in learning more about individual companies, then dividend yielding stocks is an absolutely amazing option to turn to, because it truly is, in my opinion, one of the only forms of passive income. And if you can grow a stock portfolio made up of dividend yielding stocks large enough, you can not only have an investment that grows year over time, but you can also have a passive income source in the process. So if you haven't looked into dividends or ETFs or mutual funds and you are interested in having a kind of more passive investing style, then this is a great option for you. Now, my fifth and final tip for y'all is also probably my most important one, and that is to keep your cash reserves and your investments in two different places. And what I mean by that is that you want to make sure to have your cash reserves, which would ideally make up your emergency fund. You want to make sure to keep that in an accessible and easy to access place. Some place like a high yield savings account would be a perfect place to keep your extra cash reserves. Well, on the flip side, you can then put your investments in things like ETFs, mutual funds, bonds, dividend yielding stocks, whatever the case is. But the biggest risk to your return on your investment is taking out and having to sell your investment at the wrong time. For example, right now during this pandemic, a lot of people are kind of being stretched financially thin. And because of that, if you're somebody that has a lot of money in the stock market, but you don't have a lot of money in cash reserves, you could be somebody who was forced to sell your stocks at an all-time low. And as a result, you would lose a ton of money in the process. Well, on the flip side, if you're somebody who has your emergency fund and your cash reserves in someplace like a high yield savings account, you can access that money without having a negative impact on the return of investment on your stock portfolio. You want to make sure that you have enough liquid funds available to cover any hardships that you may be experiencing, while avoiding impacting the return on your investments and having to sell any investments at a loss. And that is so important because at the end of the day, losses in the market are only losses when you sell. And it's something that so many investors are experiencing now during this market crash, is with the volatility that we've all been seeing with crazy high highs and then crazy low lows, You don't lose money and you don't gain money until you sell your investments. And if you don't sell, then you can't have losses. And so long-term investing is simply a matter of buying and holding and then selling whenever it is the absolute best time to sell. And a surefire way to ruin that plan is by selling prematurely and in a state of emergency. And so with that being said, you guys, these are my top 5 investing tips. And I do want to preface that though I know none of these tips are really groundbreaking tips that none of us didn't already know, they are tips that are really easy to start implementing in your own life. And it is a surefire way that you yourself can put yourself on the track to eventually become a millionaire and financially free, regardless of what your income level is now. If you're able to pay your bills, if you're able to save an emergency fund, and if you're able to contribute a portion of your income each and every month to an investment portfolio, you yourself can put yourself on the fast track to becoming financially free later on down the road. You don't have to be the Carl Icahn or Warren Buffetts of the world in order to have a successful investment portfolio and eventually become financially free. All you have to do is make consistent steps in the right direction, and eventually those will start compounding on one another to make a huge difference later on in your life. And so with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your investing thoughts, and if you have any of your own investing tips, tricks, or strategies that you would like to share with us. If so, definitely leave a comment below, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And while you're at it, make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.